Hey everybody, welcome to Dan Bullman Photography. This week I'm going to share with you a few tips on how to get better instant photos with Impossible Project Film. Now if you've shot with Impossible Project Film before, you've probably experienced some bad looking photos. So I just wanted to give you some tips on how to make better photos with Impossible Project Film and give you some ideas on how to troubleshoot when things go wrong. Having a basic understanding on how instant photos work with the Impossible Project and with old Polaroids, I think really helps in terms of conceptualizing how to troubleshoot and how to get better photos. So basically what happens when you take an instant photo with a Polaroid camera is that when you press the shutter, the camera exposes the film portion to light, and this is where your photo will happen. And then it shoots it out of the camera through a series of rollers, and on the back you'll see three little pods, and this is what contains the developing chemicals. So whenever the print spits out of the camera, the rollers break these pods open on the back and spread the developing chemicals across the front of it and develops the photo. And it usually takes about 30 to 40 minutes for an Impossible Project print to develop. So my first tip for taking better Impossible Project photos is make sure the rollers on your camera are clean. And you can sort of take a look at this by opening up the camera, and you'll see the rollers are right here. It's just two metal things that roll the print through. And whenever they do this, over time they will get some of the chemicals on them and can develop gunk, and this could lead to an uneven spreading of the developing chemicals across the print when it comes out of the camera. So it's really easy to clean them. Basically all you do is take a paper towel, run some warm water over it, and then just take it and rub and clean off all of the gunk, and just make sure your rollers are clean, because that's what's going to spread the developing chemicals across your photo and make sure that it develops evenly. So the next thing you're going to want to do is just pay attention to how much light you have in your scene. Having enough light to take a properly exposed instant photo is really important. The typical ASA or ISO of Impossible Project Film is about 160, so it's really something that is meant to be shot in daylight, outdoors. So if you're taking photos indoors, they might come out blurry or underexposed. And so you just want to make sure you're in the right lighting conditions for the type of film that you're using. And just as an example, here are a couple of prints that I shot indoors without a flash, because when I was shooting these photos, I was using a Polaroid 600 camera that the flash didn't work on, and there just wasn't enough light to properly expose the images, so I came out with, in both these cases, a totally dark frame. Another important setting to look at on your Polaroid camera when you're taking a photo is the exposure compensation dial. And most Polaroid cameras are going to have an exposure compensation. So you just want to make sure that if, say, your photo comes out too dark, then maybe you put more on the lightened side and take another photo and see if that fixes it. Because that's ultimately one of the things that's going to help control how light or dark your images come out of the camera. Another important thing to consider is how you store your film when it's not being used, and also how the film is stored when you buy it. Now, in a lot of cases you can't necessarily see this if you're purchasing it online, but some important things to check for are the expiration date on the pack. So make sure that you're shooting with film that is still within the expiration date, like it hasn't expired yet. I mean, you can shoot expired film, but it might not come out great. And so what you want to do when you have it is just store this in the fridge until you want to take it out and shoot with it, and then you want to let it sit out at room temperature for about an hour before you actually load it into the camera. And that's what Impossible Project recommends to get the best results with it. At this point, I generally just buy the stuff direct from Impossible Project on their website, because I've had iffy experiences buying it from a local camera store. And that's just possibly, it could have got damaged in the shipping process, it could have got damaged in the store or not been stored properly in the store. So just make sure when you're shopping for film, you take some of these things into consideration. You know, has it been sitting in a warehouse that's not climate controlled for a long time? Is it within its expiration date? And, you know, how is it being shipped? A lot of this stuff is not really within your control, but I've had pretty good results just buying direct from the Impossible Project. So once you've got everything right, you know, you've got fresh film, your camera works, all the settings are right, and you've got enough light to shoot with, it's important that once you've taken the photo that you shield it from light. So usually what I do is right after the photo comes out of the camera, I'll drop it into my camera bag and just let it develop in there out of light. Because if light is constantly hitting the front of the emulsion, then you could have problems with the developing process. So to get the best results in terms of exposure and color fidelity, it's important to shield the photo from light while it is developing. Also, I know Outcast told you to shake it like a Polaroid picture, but you don't really want to shake the Impossible Project photos when they're developing. So you just want to make sure that you're not bending the photo, you're not doing anything, because shaking it isn't actually going to aid the development process at all, and it could actually hurt things. So can't really trust Outcast advice on this anymore. It was relevant at the time, but with the new film, you just can't use it. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention in terms of testing out a camera to make sure it's working, a trick you can do is actually to load an empty film cartridge into the camera, and if it spits out the frog tongue, then pretty much you know the camera is functioning properly. I mean, maybe the meter won't work properly, you won't really know until you start shooting with it, but at least you'll know the mechanics of it are functioning, because the battery for the camera is actually in the film pack, and that's what drives the mechanics and the motor on the inside of the camera. So if you're out at a thrift shop or something and you're looking at old Polaroid cameras and you just want to make sure that it works before you buy it, bring an empty film case with you and load it up into the camera and see if it works. So in conclusion, make sure you have a functioning camera that is both clean and working properly. Make sure your camera settings are correct for the lighting conditions you're in. Make sure you have enough light in your scene to actually properly expose the image. Make sure you're using fresh film that has been properly stored to the best of your ability. And then don't bend the photos and store them out of light while they're developing. And with these tips, you should be able to take some excellent instant impossible photos. As always, if you like these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And please be sure to follow me on Instagram, Snapchat. Please subscribe. I'll have a video coming out later this week on how to shoot with a Polaroid SX70, so check back in to see that video. We'll see you next time. This has been Dan Bullman Photography. Peace.
Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it.